That's where pleasure lies. So much so that you listen to the words of our elders, and they used to say, comparing themselves to the khulafa of their time. The khulafa meaning the governing khulafa, right? The president of their time. They used to say that if the khalifa of our time knew the taste that we experience in the deen, on the musalla, they would turn their armies away from the other countries and they would come and try to conquer our musallas. Why? Because that's where pleasure, that's where the true taste lies. That's where it's the only taste that can never be reproduced. It's a drug. It brings you to the high of the deen, which nothing else can compare to. But all of it lies in the sunnah. For us, the way is the sunnah. So, in every single aspect, we have to begin to analyze where can we follow the sunnah. Now, when you do that, what happens is everything else falls into place. You know, this whole thing that people say, well, if we have to leave the sunnah because we want to bring people into the deen. Right? This is the new way of burning the garden of the Prophet ﷺ. So what do we say? If we leave the sunnah, then people will accept us and accept the deen. Otherwise, people will never accept us. Actually, it's totally the opposite. Because the paradigm is established in the Quran. Look, one thing is that you try to convince people to love you. It's not going to work. Another thing is that the angels are yelling from the top of the universe that you have to love that individual. That's the person that people are going to flock to. Imagine if you become the beloved of Allah and Allah begins to tell the angels, oh angels, I love such and such and so, so you too should love such and such and so. And then the angels begin to proclaim it to the universe, that Allah loves such and so, so you too should love such and so. That applies to Muslims and non-Muslims. What happens? In their ear, the angels begin to whisper that there is something about this man, there is something about this woman, there is something about this family, there's something about this group of people. And what happens? They naturally become attracted. This is exactly the paradigm that the Sahaba used to spread the deen. If you go through historically and you see what did the Sahaba do to convince countries to fall at their feet. Countries. The Sahaba went into individual cities and countries and the whole place would change because of them. Now what did they do? Did they print flyers? No. Did they send out emails? No. Were they calling people on the cell phone and saying that you have to come to this deen? No. All they did was they were themselves. But when they came into that environment, because they were so beloved to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the people had no choice but to flock to them. In fact, it's known that people used to come to them and say, how can we become like you? What is it about you that is so unique that we have not seen in any other human being? And all they would say is, Kunu mithlana. Kunu mithlana. Be like us. Follow us. We walk in the footsteps of the Prophet ﷺ. If you walk in our footsteps, you will get the exact same result. They were shocked by their honesty, by their truthfulness, by their determination, by their commitment. They had never seen this in a human being. In fact, they had never seen human beings because that's what a human being is. A human being that's what the development of a human being. It's easy to make cars. It's easy to make all these computers and cell phones and all these technical gadgets that we make. It's hard to make a human being. That's the hardest job. And you ask our teachers and that's what they'll tell you. This is what my teachers used to say. They used to say that this is the hardest thing training you guys. Because we're actually turning you into human beings. It is the hardest job. Take a person and turn them into a human being. So actually, the whole method of spreading the deen comes through this. Because that's what people are going to fall in love with. It's the sunnah of the Prophet. They're not going to fall in love with the fact that, Muslims were the first people to come up with ice cream or something like that. That's not going to change them, the fact that Muslims know how to cook biryani in their homes. Actually, what will attract them is the sunnah. And even the second proof is actually in the rate of conversion. How many people convert? So 19,000 people convert, and 2/3 of those people revert within 2 years. Why? Because they heard about the deen, they read about the deen, they knew that there were people who followed the deen, but they didn't find the deen. They didn't find those people. So what did they do? They continued their search. They're sincere. They should. Because they didn't find what they were looking for. So that's what they end up doing, and it's very unfortunate, but it's actually our fault. Because we don't present them with the deen. Now understand that this paradigm is not dependent upon the number of people that follow it. Okay? So if there are 50, 60,000 people, and they don't follow the sunnah, it doesn't make a difference. It all is based upon a group of individuals that follow the Sunnah, and all of Allah's tawajjuh turns upon those people. All of Allah's tawajjuh turns upon that group of people. Because that is the paradigm that He has established through His blessed messenger. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Proof is in the Quran. إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ فَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the people of Kahf, of the cave. Those few group of people. They were just a small group of youth. Now there were so many people on the planet at that time. Imagine. I mean, they lived in a time when the planet was populated. There were so many people on the planet in that day and age. Yet Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala actually preserved the recollection of their history. Why? إِنَّهُمْ فِتْيَةٌ آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. They were a small group of kids. A small young group of people. آمَنُوا بِرَبِّهِمْ. This was their characteristic. They believed in their Lord. Because of that, فَزِدْنَاهُمْ هُدًى. So we increased them in guidance. Why? Because that, of all of creation at that time, the tawajjuh of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was upon that group of people. That group of people became the focus of Allah. Same thing with the Sahaba. Now at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, they were just a handful. They were very few. In fact, Umar radiallahu anhu was around the 40th person to convert. So you can imagine what a small group of people. Basically, we probably have that many people. In the 7 years before the conversion of Umar radiallahu anhu, we probably have that many people in the room right now. Right? About 40. And yet, all of the attention of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was on them. Why? Because they were following the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet ﷺ was among them, of course. Now, of course the Prophet ﷺ is not amongst us, but actually the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ still remains. And that now becomes the defining factor. Those people who walk on the path of the sunnah, they attract the mercy of Allah. And those people who leave the path of the sunnah, they do still receive a general mercy of Allah. A general Muslim receives the general mercy of Allah. Like I said in the beginning. Muslims and non-Muslims still receive a particular mercy of Allah. But there is this very special mercy that falls upon those people who make a very special effort to inculcate the sunnah.